unfortunately, my health concerns I had battled previously had come back with a vengeance, but thankfully it's all under control now, and I'm going to finish out my last 3 classes towards my bachelor's degree, and then be well on my way to doing my master's online, and it's just going to be such a wonderful time. So I'm really grateful that I've been given this second chance to finish things out and learn a lot about myself. And speaking of learning about things, you guys are going to learn quite a bit about us and how we deal with situations, because our subject matter is dealing with difficult people, and Lauryn's going to speak from more the perspective of others impacting your life. But in lieu of what's happened with me, I'm going to talk about how you can also beat yourself up, and even when you don't recognize it, it can still impact you in more ways than you think. So I want to start with Lauryn and see what she has to say.
Yeah, and I first wanted to say I'm really grateful that your health has been restored and you're doing so well now. And I always knew you would. And I'm just so thankful for that too. And as Ray had just mentioned, yeah, our lives have been extremely busy for the past couple months. And I started graduate school at University of Florida this past August. I'm getting my master's in professional communication and public relations. I'm also a grant writer for a nonprofit organization in Tampa, my hometown, and I got a new position writing for the Tampa Bay Business and Wealth magazine. So I keep very busy, but I'm glad that we were able to find time to start doing our podcast again, because I've always enjoyed this. And yeah, so to elaborate more on what Ray is talking about, there have been events in our past and people in our past who we didn't particularly care for. And as a matter of fact, I'm actually writing a memoir. I'm still in the process of it. It's about my life and things I've endured, things I've overcome, I've encountered, and it really encompasses every aspect of my life. And so certain topics you're going to hear a little bit about through this podcast. I don't go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil too much for my book, but I am going to touch the surface of it and you'll have a general idea of what it's about. This is just the part 1, but especially from my perspective, you're going to hear about people from my life and my past who, honestly, I'll be honest, it's a shame people like that even exist. I'm just going to say that. I don't even care. So today, I'm going to talk about experiences I had in high school, and then our part 2 episode, I'll talk about people from college who I had problems with.
Well, what's not a shame is that once you're done with this memoir, hopefully we can get that flying off the bookshelves here.
I would love that. Yeah, I hope it's a bestseller. I know it'll be my first memoir ever written, but as long as it gets published, I think that too, just allowing all that just releasing all that from your mind is very cathartic, and that's part of the reason I like it. And I want to also, just inspire other people too.
Yeah, giving a voice for people who either don't quite know how to articulate what they're feeling, especially feeling comfortable enough to even tell a family member that they trust, just because there's always that assumption in your mind that no one else will understand because it's not happened to them. And even as that may be the case, there can still be understanding, but because it just feels so isolating, it's really nice to read from someone like yourself who's gone through things that in the moment you don't quite understand, and from your perspective to do it in a way where it's reflective and insightful for others. It's just a really cool thing to do.
I think so too. Yeah. And especially for me, growing up, I was always very reserved and bashful, and I didn't think for a long time my voice mattered. And I grew up in a very religious, spiritual kind of family, so I was taught that if you're ever mean, or it's just wrong, or you're going to hell, or God's not going to like you, or he's going to be mad at you, blah, blah, blah. And that those are things I learned from other people too. But I'm to the point now where I just don't care. I am who I am, and I don't allow people to walk all over me anymore. I'm still a good person, but I think for many years people misinterpreted and misconstrued my kindness for weakness, and they used it as a license to disrespect me and exploit me. So I want to address that because I didn't address it at the time. And I think just, like, as you get older, you learn from that, and you look back on certain things and you realize that certain things weren't okay. So I have no problem. I found my voice, and I have no problem saying what I'm going to say.
That's very valid, honestly. And it's kind of funny, earlier on you said that you felt like you didn't have a voice, because that's actually the whole point behind the name Rachel the Voice, other than just my love for singing, to make people feel like they have a voice. And also, though in slightly different outlets of expressing it, that's why we both as individuals want to interview for a living, because I know for me personally that being soft-spoken can be misinterpreted as not being confident, or that you don't really know what you're talking about and you're hesitant. But I feel like you don't have to yell or scream or talk too loud to get your point across, or to come across as the most confident person. You can still speak softly and yet have wise words. So that's another reason that motivates me too, is to kind of help the shy kid in me a long time ago be proud of who I am now, and to do that for others who feel hesitant that what they've been through in life, or haven't yet, isn't valid enough, or they haven't had enough hardships for their experiences to matter. Because every moment and path people take in life is relevant and can help someone else more than you think. So I really love the fact that you're working on this memoir, and I just hope in my future endeavors that no matter what kind of job you have or hardship you've been through life, that you feel validated and seen. And I feel like that's also why Lauryn and I are really good friends, because we bring that out of each other, of the kindness and attentiveness to listen to others and care.
I agree, and I think that too, like, our friendship is just so genuine. And that's something I think we'll talk about too, is like how to discern true friends from people who, maybe at the time you thought you might have deluded yourself into believing they were friends, but they really weren't. So, maybe this would be a good time to like really dive in it, because I get our viewers probably hearing this, they don't know like what we're talking about. So I guess without further ado, we can get started.
Yeah, let's stop beating around the bush and sugarcoating things because we're Southern. Let's just get right into the nitty-gritty.
Let's do it.
So, Lauryn, I recall you briefly telling me, and I obviously made sure before we started recording this, that these topics of conversation were comfortable for you, that you started to notice people taking advantage of you in high school. Was there any particular class or clubs, or just like in a general sense of friends that you made, no matter how they came to be in your life, of when you really noticed this trend of your kindness being sought after and taken advantage of?
Good question. And in all honesty, as far as it goes with people taking advantage of me, that was a trend that had actually transpired for most of my life, dating back to when I was a child, elementary school, or even preschool for that matter. But I would say in high school, like towards the middle to end of ninth grade specifically, was when I really hit rock bottom with it, and I realized that I could not allow that to happen anymore. That's when I really started to develop self-respect and know that I couldn't allow people to treat me that way. So that whole experience in ninth grade was really the final straw, if you will. And it wasn't an isolated incident. It was a reoccurring pattern with certain people I associated with, specifically one girl in particular who I would just say that, it's really weird because I'm 23 now. So just me reflecting back on my 14-year-old self at the time, it's just like, oh my gosh, I wish I had known back then what I know now. I wish I had been the person then that I am now, because there's no way I would have allowed that. I would have just let her have it, honestly. So yeah.
It's funny how 9 or 10 years, like practically a decade, feels so long ago, because you're such a different person in high school in that type of environment than you are now. And it's pretty crazy to recognize. It's like you're not that old, but you feel like you still lived a decent amount of life to be like, I have grown quite a bit in this respect,
Mm-hmm. And thank God I did, like seriously.
So I actually wanted to make double sure, I know you briefly mentioned one girl, but did you want to use code names, or how do you want to approach that?
Absolutely. So for my story, but yes, we will definitely use code names. And in this case, let's call this girl, let's say her name is Eva.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like that. It's like, but it's the evil version of Eva from WALL-E. Got it.
Period. That's her name and reputation.
All right. So how did Eva impact your life?
Okay. Well, just to give a general overview of what happened, I met her in one of my classes freshman year. I think it might have been, it was either my gym class or my homeroom class, and I only knew her for a few months, maybe like honestly less than 6 months. And I would only see her for like 50 minutes a day because we sat together at lunch with some other people who I was friends with and who she was friends with too. So I'll first just say, like, part of it was maybe my fault for not taking so much time and getting to know her. And that's something I would like to convey too. It takes time to build a friendship. And of course, like your, first year of high school or even in middle school for that matter, you want to feel like you have a clique. You want to fit in. But my only advice would be just make sure you get to know people as best as you can, because people are not always who they present themselves to be. And you might find out later that they're either not who you thought they were, or they've changed for the worse. But don't rush any friendship. Don't rush any relationship. Let it evolve naturally, and don't repeat my mistake and settle for anyone just to say, oh, I have a friend or I'm a part of a group, because it's not worth it in the end. But Eva in particular, you'll find out more in the book what really went down, but she disrespected me. She used me. She physically assaulted me, not once, but twice. She threatened me.
Goodness.
Yeah, she honestly treated me like total dirt, like I was subhuman, honestly. And eventually, the final straw was when she crossed a big line with me. And yeah, so I think maybe I can count on one hand how many times I actually spoke up for myself and defended myself. And so, oh yeah, the other thing too was at one point she took my personal property and told me she was not going to give it back unless I did what she said, which honestly, I should have honestly snatched it back and smacked her upside the head with it.
Honestly, it seems like Eva was too much of a big fan of Rocky, because what in the world?
Yeah, like seriously, like I would not, seriously, in that particular moment, I would have done just that. It was my lunchbox, honestly. I would have snatched it back and in hindsight and just smacked her upside the head with it and told her, look, you don't tell me what to do. I don't know who you think you are, but you're not the boss of me. I'm not your daughter, and I'm not your, I'm going to say it, I'm not your colored help. Those days are over. This is not the 1950s.
Yeah, no matter what you look like, there's no excuse to ever be treated as someone's punching bag, especially because she was clearly emotionally underdeveloped, with resulting to aggression from 0 to 100. And just from this brief description, it sounds like you don't really know what'll set her off. So that's just unfortunate for herself too, of feeling that that's the only way you can resolve an issue. And I'm sorry that happened to be you she was doing that with. And it's truly unfortunate that whether it's like nature or nurture of being raised to think that way, or just something innate in them makes them feel that way, and their parents are just the nicest people, and you can't be like, you're just wondering how in the heck did they raise someone like that. It's truly saddening.
It really is. And I agree, like nature and nurture does have a lot to do with it. I don't know anything about her upbringing because I never met her parents or any of her relatives, which if they're anything like her, then that's a blessing. But what I will say though was that I guess looking back now, I would say that I was a different person. I was only 14, so of course I have a different perspective on that now. But that was not when I officially cut her off. I officially cut her off 2 months later, and it had just been a consistent pattern of her disrespecting me, and I was really mad in the end because I had been nothing but kind to her. I'd like given her my food out of my lunchbox every single day, gave her gifts for the holidays, invited her to my home for a party at one point, which she wasn't able to attend, thank God. And what the worst part was that I, on numerous occasions, bought her lunch or bought her snacks with my money out of my wallet, which for the record, I did not have to do. And she only reimbursed me for that once and never even had the decency to ever say thank you for anything I ever did for her. So, and yeah, in hindsight, I do regret doing all those things. And the final straw for me was when she insulted my intelligence, and she crossed a huge line with me there because I had learning challenges when I was in elementary school. I struggled academically. I doubted my own intelligence, and for 3 years, from 4th through 6th grade, I attended a school for kids with learning disabilities. So when she said that, honestly, how she was lucky to still be alive, because how I did not choke her to sleep, I do not know, or how at the very least I did not curse her out, or go off on her. I don't even know, because there are always certain lines you just don't cross, and she crossed that line with me. So yeah, I was really angry at the time for a long time, and I was just so mad because I was so mad because I thought of all the things I should have said and I wanted to say that I didn't, and I just kept thinking, if I could go back and just let her have it. I thought, you know, if I could, I thought for so long, if I could have a do-over, or I could just speak my mind and just go off on her altogether, she would walk away crying, honestly, at that point.
I don't know why, but as you were elaborating on that description, I kept thinking, yeah, Lauryn would probably just go Kung Fu Panda all over her.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's right.
But I jokingly thought as well that when you were talking about how you wished you could have choked her out and you don't know what came over you, all I could think in that moment was, man, that must have been the Holy Spirit, and he was just saying, girl, I get it, but I got this.
Yeah, seriously, that's what there's no way I would say she even knows who God is treating me. And it wasn't just me, because, but in that case, yeah, it was me. So I said, no, there's no way she even knows who God is treating me the way she does, too, after everything I've done for her, too, and how I've been nothing but kind to her. So, yeah. So in hindsight, I will say this. I do regret everything I did for her, and I do regret that I ever met her, and I regret that I was ever nice to her. But over time, looking back on that now, it's been so long, honestly. So what I would say is, and by the way, this doesn't mean that if I ever saw her again, I would, honestly, if I saw her, I don't think I'd even recognize her, because it's been so long. So no, I don't think I would. But even if I did, it wouldn't faze me at all. I would do what I did for the rest of high school whenever I saw her, and that is ignore her and to go about my business, because she's nothing. She's not worth anything. And that's the biggest thing too. So I'm sure there are other people who endured what I did as well. But what I would like our listeners to take away from my experience in particular, and for anyone who has those same thoughts that I just said, you're not wrong for having those thoughts. Like, of course, it's not okay to go around being mean to people just because. Like, no, I would never encourage anyone to do that. But if a person has repeatedly disrespected you, mistreated you, or just been straight up nasty towards you, there's no excuse for that. And you have a right to set boundaries in your life. You have a right to tell people, don't talk to me that way. Don't treat me like that. Don't do that. I don't appreciate that. And if they keep doing it, then you have a right to cut them off. Or if they're just continuing to be mean, then it's okay to be mean back. And I stand by that. It's okay. And don't let anyone try to gaslight you or use like any sort of tactic, whether it's the Bible or God or anything else or whatever your faith might be, to silence you and tell you it's not okay. Because, no one has the right to mistreat you. Nobody does. So what I learned, though, is that, interestingly enough, most people who knew her did not think highly of her. Most were other students, and even one adult, a mother of one of the kids at our school who was a year behind me. And I only knew this because I overheard some people who would talk about her. And I cut her off after that because, like I said, she crossed the line. So I never spoke to her after freshman year. And they say that as people get older, they do, some people change for the better. And I get that a lot. They're like, oh, people change. People are not the same as you might remember them as. And yeah, in some cases that's true. And if they change, good. But, the way I look at it, whether they change for the better or not, I could not care less, because either way, I would never trust them again. And what I do know for a fact is that as of 3 years later, by our senior year, she still had not changed. And this was only because of certain behaviors I observed whenever I did see her, and based on things other people who knew her would say, things I overheard. So I was like, yeah, 3 years later, but it didn't surprise me at all. So I think it just goes to show some people are just sadistic, demonic, horrible people, ignorant people, and that's exactly what she is. But, I look at that now and I think, like, what was I thinking? I must have been out of my mind to ever settle for something like that. Yeah, I am referring to her as something like that. Unfortunately, there are people like Eva in the world. The world would be a better place if they were not here, because, and I don't feel bad saying that. I really don't, because the less demonic, ignorant, and horrible people like her we have on this earth, the better. That's just a fact. They make the world a worse place. And I really don't know, because like I can't attribute part of that to the way someone is raised, or that's just how they are. But I also will say she was very spoiled too. I could tell she was a spoiled brat. But I think it also has to do with parents and the way they raise their children. I mean, so I think, well, maybe if her parents had beat her butt a few times or given her a good spanking, maybe she would not have turned out the way as terribly as she did. And that's a fact, because I just think about like kids like that, and I've known other people like her as well, and I'm just like, what did their parents teach them? Like, honestly. So yeah, that's my whole take on that. What I want people to really know is people like that are not going to go anywhere in life. All they really are is they're just evil people. And, sometimes people try to make excuses for them and say that they're insecure or they're hurt. They might have been going through something in their personal lives. Well, that's no excuse. When you mistreat somebody to that degree, there's no excuse for that, especially if you're doing it continuously. That does not make you a hurt person or an insecure person. That just makes you a terrible, evil, rotten human being. And it's inexcusable. There's no justification for it at all. So you don't need people like that in your life. You shouldn't want them around you, and get away from them, and don't feel guilty for never speaking to them again. That's the best thing you can do. And surround yourself with people who do respect you and who do care about you. And if you've done that, and as long as you know who you are, that's all that counts. No, other people don't define who you are. And that's all it was. It was just jealousy, honestly. I can tell. I'm very discerning. And I'm really good at picking up vibes from people, so that's what it was. But you know what? That was her problem, not mine. And I have a wonderful life. I just think of how far I've come, and God has blessed me. I'm here. I'm happy.
Well, I actually have a few things to take away from that, so bear with me. I think it's awfully interesting how you kind of touched on the psychology of a bully and how people respond to it when it comes to defending them or whatnot, where it is quite interesting that even if they know the person decently well, more on the acquaintance kind of friendly side, but not really know them, it's always a generalization of insecurity, traumatized childhood, all these kind of things. They basically put a Hollywood filter over it. But either no one truly cared to ask enough of them of why they think it's okay to act out in this way, as far as truly getting down to the root of things, of just, instead of assuming something of any tragic extent happened, to just sit down and ask them, what about life that you have lived so far has made you think that this would even be remotely okay? I'm sure you wouldn't want anyone to treat you like this. So what gives?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying this in a way to excuse bullies and try to sit down and have a conversation with them, because 9 out of 10 times they won't see what they're doing is wrong, and definitely won't want to be civil about talking with you, and may say something like, oh, don't try some psychological voodoo on me. You know, a lot of people don't like being confronted when they're really set in their ways and thought to change, because it really does take quite a lot of seeds over time for someone's heart and actions to truly change. So that's why it also said earlier about people mellowing out over time. People grow at different rates. So it could take someone 10 years to change for the better, or it could take them longer or an even shorter amount of time. You don't really know, because everyone's journey is different. And it is quite peculiar that anyone thinks it's okay to terrorize and hit and verbally bully someone, because they're also doing themselves a disservice. Because like you had said, the people that were surrounded in her life really didn't respect her. Probably some of those people stuck around out of simple fear and not true respect of that person. And I'm also grateful for the fact that you as a person not let that change you and define you in a way where even though you regret being kind to her, you haven't regretted since being kind to other people. Because I know a lot of people with stories in general of them being bullied, I've heard how they let that change them for the worse and started being a bit more irritable and less trusting of people. But you didn't let that be the path that you took or the mindset that you had with life. So I applaud you for that, for sure. And I think that standing up for yourself isn't ever mean, because even if you dish out the same kind of treatment someone else is giving you, that doesn't mean you're aggressive or vindictive or whatnot. It just means that you're recognizing enough of who you are, your limitations and boundaries, to voice, I'm not okay with this, and I want to shut this down right now so you don't think you have the privilege or entitlement to treat me in this way. And you don't even have to yell and stuff like they probably will. You can still stand up for yourself and project your voice and be firm and tactful. And it can be hard at first, especially when you've endured it for quite a few months or years from the same person or maybe a cliquey group of people. It can be hard, especially if they are physical, to defend yourself with words and potentially fists if it ever comes to that. Obviously, that's not the hope, so don't misinterpret that. If you're listening at home, don't go Cobra Kai or Kung Fu Panda on anyone. But the point is that defense is never to blame, especially because you're not instigating it. I'm very grateful that, as sad as it is that you've went through that in your life, that you've turned out to be the person that you are and that you're stronger from it. And the hope is always that people don't ever have to go through something disheartening or saddening and a disappointing time in life to this extent. But in general, growing stronger, learning from things, it's not exactly easy because not many people are introspective. And clearly you've shown that you are, because of the things you've taken into consideration about being vocal about how you want people to treat you and realizing that you don't want to be walked over. And I don't think anyone is less of a Christian to stand up for themselves, because even Jesus said turn the other cheek. So when you're saying about how people can use the Bible against you, you can also tell them that he turned over a table of people selling stuff in the tabernacle on a sacred Sunday. It's just, you got righteous anger is the thing. So don't feel that you have to turn and become a bully in order to defend yourself. You still can and be a strong good, wise person. So I'm very grateful that you felt comfortable enough to share your story and your reflections upon that. And I hope Eva, that something thing, if she ever comes across this, realizes that she did not win when it came to you and beating you down. And it didn't impact your future at all and your present. And you have friends like me who love and support you and don't need that kind of drama in your life. And hopefully, since time has passed, she's become a better person. But who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, we don't know, but yeah, and thank you for sharing all of that. And it's true. So to touch on that too, it does get better, because I can say, like, for the rest of high school, I had such wonderful, amazing friends. And when I think about them, which, by the way, if you're listening, hi guys, love you so much. But seriously, like, I know nobody's perfect, but I felt like they were almost perfect, honestly, because all the friends I had in high school, and they were just so sweet, so kind, so genuine, and they were down to earth. They were intelligent. In other words, the total opposite of Eva. And seriously. Oh, and as far as the intelligence goes, well, she technically proved how unintelligent she was, because one of my other friends who used to hang out with them said she called me thick, and she meant dumb by that. So I would say, well, again, that just proves how stupid she is, because she doesn't even know one adjective from another. If Eva was looking for a word that's synonymous to dumb or stupid, she should try vacuous, which is exactly what she is. And yeah, I guess
maybe she was secretly in love with you and meant thick with 2 C's.
Well, I'm not into her like that, so I don't think anybody's into her.
All I'm saying, it was like one-sided, and deep down she actually loved you. Who knows?
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's the thing. That's the thing. Like, she could never just leave me alone. She was always prying into my business. So that's my point. It's jealousy, honestly. So if people can talk all that smack about you, but they can't stay away, and they can't leave you alone and stay out of your business, even after you've cut them off, that just goes to show how jealous they are and how threatened they are of you. But I want everyone here to know, people like her, and that's not I'm not triggered, because that's not the last time that's going to happen. In the future, especially with me wanting to become a public figure, I'm going to have critics, I'm going to have haters. That's inevitable. So you just have to have thick skin. You can defend yourself, but don't let people like that break you down. And understand, people like that do not go anywhere in life. They really, truly don't. And that's the thing. Being a bully is not going to get you anywhere in life. No one's going to respect you. No one's going to take you seriously. No one's going to like you. So when she comes to the end of her life and people like her, and they realize that no one cares to be around them, they can reflect back on their lives and ask themselves why. I would say, think about the way you've treated people, the way you made them feel. Think about all the people you've hurt. No wonder nobody likes you. But anyways, you move on from people like that. And the Bible also says, from such people, turn away. So if you just move on and respect yourself. You can't worry about toxic, negative people like that, because, as I mentioned before, they're going to end up not amounting to anything if they don't rectify their terrible, evil ways. But, irrespective of whether they change for the better or not, that's not your problem. It's not something you should worry about. So it's not something I lose sleep over. All I can control is my own life and being in charge of my own destiny and being the best person that I can be. So, I've had a wonderful life, and, sometimes you have to go through difficult experiences to really change yourself and understand who you are and find who you are and find your voice. So I'm glad that I found that, and that's it. That's all you can do. And of course, like, looking back, if I could do things differently, I would. But I was only 14. So you have to, once you become an adult, you can look back on certain events you went through in your childhood that were less than favorable, but you have to give yourself a little grace, because you weren't supposed to know back then what you do now. And we are a growing progress. We're not set in stone. We're always learning and evolving. So you have to be able to forgive yourself for allowing certain things. So that's what I've had to learn. And not just with that, but with other things I've gone through in my life as well. I have to forgive myself for allowing certain things or not knowing the best way to respond. But I do now. And because I do, I can just take those lessons and that knowledge and apply that to situations in the future.
Some battles that you face in life aren't just with other people. I will also expand upon this in part 2. But to start things off with my perspective, sometimes the battle you fight with yourself can be just as damaging to your esteem, and it affects you with how you deal with other people as well, as far as trust and feeling vulnerable enough to open yourself up and not just leave it to shallow and for the sake of face kind of things. Beating yourself up internally and giving yourself a hard time and being overly critical to the point where you start to believe these critical negative thoughts as the truth of yourself and define yourself by that is something that I feel is being talked about a lot more with people in the social media realm, bringing up mental health and such, but I feel as though we're only touching the surface for that. I feel that our generation's quite good at feeling decently vulnerable to convey things they're going through. Sometimes we don't exactly think through things of what we say in a post and, tweet it out or put it on a story, but sometimes we don't have problems holding back. But others like myself that are intelligent but yet highly critical of themselves more than other people, and maybe in some ways a bit too introspective and just hard to get out of your own head, also deal with shortcomings of being your own bully. And that definitely came to a head this past year with me being sick and dealing with what's called SAD, or seasonal affective disorder, which when there's less sunlight in the more winter months for me, it affects my circadian rhythm. Since it's darker most of the time, it's very hard for me to sleep and affects my life in a way where sleep deprivation has been known to be a torture tactic for entities like the FBI and CIA and those kind of things, Homeland Security. So I was basically being tortured every day. And it was very harrowing, and it made me feel as though I'd taken for granted the friendships and stuff I made along the way, in the sense of accessibility to seeing them all the time and living my best life, because I had so much energy drained. I could barely even think enough to sometimes even remember to eat something. It was pretty bad. But thankfully all that's in order now. But while healing from that process physically, mentally, there was damage left behind of beating myself up for how could you allow this to happen to yourself? You've already been through this kind of once, but this was way worse because it lasted way longer and affected the trajectory of your future with graduating sooner, and all these negative thoughts seeped in and had convinced myself that this was a defining moment for me, and it would be a lot larger of a hole to climb out of than it actually was. And I was pretty distant from God in those moments, I'm not gonna lie, because it also didn't help that I could barely even think for myself, with taking care of myself, but much less to remember to pray. So I'm grateful that I've gone back on track with that now, and at my local church here at home, which I will miss the consistency of being able to see them once I'm back at school next year. But so far, since September, it's been great to meet every Sunday. We're off for the holidays in December now, but every Sunday we meet up and talk about a passage in Genesis. And it was wonderful to have that discipline of going through certain verses within a chapter and memorizing encouraging Bible verse to help with a clear mind and peacefulness in your heart and soul. And to get to know each other a little bit. I was actually the youngest of the group. Most of them were married and had kids, whether it was newborn or someone in their 20s, close to my age. And the only one close to my age is 30. And she has an established career and is taking classes to further herself with getting a better paying job. And I'm just over here like, I guess I'm the baby here. Hello? But they're all very sweet. And I love them. So if they're listening to this, hey girls. But it took me a while to even feel that I deserved to have a support group like that. And thankfully, before I came across these wonderful women in my life, I did reach back out to my friends. And when I was comfortable enough to feel more accepting of what I've been through, enough to voice what was going on, and I was very grateful to my friends like Lauryn who were patient with me, to wait for me to come back, to feel comfortable and encouraged about continuing to better myself and be there for me and not think any less of me as I had myself. And you don't even have to go through health problems like I did. I have to monitor certain minerals now, and I have to do light therapy every day for 30 minutes to make sure my circadian rhythm has consistency when I wake up in the morning. And I get that flash bang of LED lights in my face so that I feel alive and I don't feel dead like Frankenstein before he was shot. It's just, health is a funny thing because even though mine was both physical and mental, the mental took a lot longer for me to wrap my head around and accept of myself that I genuinely was better. And those kinds of scars in your mind and soul can take quite a bit to get over. And even though I had troubles with my body, your mind is very much a muscle that you need to train, just like those who consistently go to the gym and stuff. Now, granted, I'm pretty lazy with that, so I just stick to yoga. And the most I do for my muscles is a minute plank. And I looked it up, and the average for women is 30, so I'm like, woohoo. But, and I do it to like worship songs. Like, I'll time out a minute within the duration of the song. It's so funny. But mental health is kind of glossed over, though talked about a bit more within our generation, as to older generations not having the privilege of being an open discussion and just something you deal with at home behind closed doors, or maybe family, but especially if you're a guy, you just internalize the crap out of that and don't confide in people because then you're seen as weak. Especially for women, even though we're seen as like the more emotional gender and a lot easier to confide in people, you still can be seen as like weak or hysterical when talking about yourself. So sometimes you want to hold back, but when you find people that you trust and realize that they feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable with you, because sometimes it takes that first step from someone else, when you've been so used to being closed within your own mind, that when you finally do release that and stop internalizing and ruminating in your own self-pity and worthlessness, then you realize how much they've impacted you with their vulnerability, and you can impact others. And not saying you have to be a motivational speaker and go around the world like Beetle Cobain and basically take over all of the High Point in North Carolina, but what I am saying is that you'll impact a lot more people than you believe to be within your own life and circles. And it's just incredible, all the things that I've learned and taken away about what true strength is and how you don't have to do everything by yourself. Not sure if I get that subconsciously from being an only child or just the independent nature my parents taught me or what, and taken it to the extreme that I have of handling everything by myself. But I'm grateful to know that I don't have to, especially with my sweet fiance, David. And yep, that's right. We got engaged this August.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So that's been a good time with realizing that someone wants to spend the rest of their life with me, and I don't have to keep all my burdens to myself. And I remind him as much too. And I advocate for mental health for everyone, for men, women, doesn't matter. Everyone's hardships and even daily simple struggles are valid to talk about with trusted people that care about you, and definitely with God for sure. But I know the first step for a lot of people is physically seeing and interacting with someone. And if you still feel really shy about it, God can speak to you through many things. I know the Bible is very popular and stuff, but if you have trouble reading and things, he can speak to you through music as well, and even just other people speaking to you with his wisdom. And I always say, as long as Jesus Christ is in the center of it, it don't matter. Like, you know, when the Bible was being written, people like Noah and stuff back then didn't have the Bible, you know, they heard from God. So there's many ways to hear the truth. There's not many paths to the truth, but just to gain it into your life. So I'm very grateful that there's peace and love and reassurance from God, as well as there is for outlining consequences like the commandments and stuff, but in a way where it's encouraging to see the trials that these people in the Bible have gone through. And when you really sit and think about it and ponder, you're thinking, okay, this guy, and I'm referring to Abraham, just lied to two different kings about Sarah being his sister. You'd think after the first time he'd know not to do that to the next kingdom over, you know, you're like, well, why is God using him to further the lineage of Jesus Christ and spread the gospel? You know, you're just like, how in the world can this man get blessed the promised land and he's doing all these conniving things to make sure he doesn't die, you know, as if God can't protect him. But it's just really funny. And it's also very humbling to realize that these people weren't perfect either. And the only one that was Jesus, and he came much later in the Bible. So it's also a reassuring thing, too, to realize that you don't have to be perfect to be used by God. And that also means you can give yourself a bit of grace when it comes to the thoughts that you remind yourself of. Obviously, everyone's going to have fleeting thoughts of negativity. No question about that. The thought just passes by. But it's when it sits there and plants seeds of doubt that you then start to believe, and it sprouts into such woe and hardships that you've placed pressure on yourself to believe is true. Then it disservices not only yourself, but then you realize with such a closed bubble and tunnel of this dark cloud around you that it affects other people as well, because then they feel closed off from you because you're pushing them away, whether you realize it or not. So I'm very grateful that with going through all that I had personally, that my truest and wonderfulest of friends stayed with me, like the wonderful Lauryn and all my other friends in and out of state that I have. And I'm very grateful for my darling fiance, who was such a supportive rock to lean upon and very encouraging and reassuring that I wasn't too broken and things like that. And it really helped a lot with starting to be confident and genuinely believing who I was before all this, how I was the life of the party, how when David and I had met at prom in high school, that's the kind of vivacious, lively person I am. And just because that was shut off for a bit doesn't mean I can't ever be back to that. And now I actually feel that way again. So I'm very blessed. And obviously I wish I didn't have to go through any of this to genuinely feel confident in my abilities. But I guess for whatever reason, with how stubborn I can be about myself sometimes, mentally anyways, with my health journey, I had to go through that. So I just want to impart on everyone listening that no matter what journey you're taking through life, whether someone else is, unfortunately, especially with how Lauryn had outlined this, if someone is physically beating you up or verbally beating you up, or you're doing that all to yourself, within the own war in your mind. Just realize, give yourself a little grace. And if you need to forgive someone, don't do it for the sake of them thinking that they deserved or entitled to forgiveness. But if anything, to do it for your own peace of mind so you can move on. And if they still act the ways they do, don't feel like the forgiveness you gave was in vain, because you're helping yourself heal more than anything if they're still a belligerent person to you. And that also applies to yourself. Give yourself some grace. And if you don't forgive yourself at first, just keep reminding yourself that you're far more than thoughts in your mind that are purposely being told to you to bring you down. Satan hates us, like he thinks we suck, because he's jealous that God loved us as much as he has and continues to. So of course he's going to plague your mind with all these doubts and remind you of past things that, those memes of saying that 3 a.m, I remember that one thing I did in high school, like that was so cringy. He's gonna put things in your mind to make you doubt yourself and to make you feel small and belittled so you don't do the things the Lord wants you to. That's kind of his whole shtick. And it's unfortunate there's a lot of evil in the world, whether it's with people or politics or just things in general that impact the world and different powers influencing our lives. And yeah, a lot of us everyday people can't control that or change it directly, but even indirectly and those within our immediate communities, we can help impact them and their lives and share our stories with however comfortable we are to the extent of doing so. And lean upon each other and help other people and realize that we can let other people help us and not carry the whole burden of the world on our shoulders, because the whole point of Christ is that he took upon everyone's burden of sin upon himself. So I feel like it's pretty cool that we don't have to do everything on our own. So don't convince yourself that you have to.
Amen to that. And I really appreciate you sharing your testimony, honestly. And they say without a test, we don't have a testimony. And I think yours is very inspiring too. And I can just tell just what I've noticed. Yes, you always have been a very effervescent, very beautiful person inside and out, and you are the life of the party. And anyone who knows Ray, like you would agree with me on that. But like she's saying, like I think if there's ever a time when you're going through difficulties in your life, whether it be psychological or anything like that, medical, physical, anything, it's great to know that you have friends who, of course, are still going to stand by your side no matter what. And something I've always wanted my friends, Ray included, but all of them to know is that if there's ever a time when they just need to be to themselves or they don't feel like really sharing what's going on right at that moment, it's okay. Like I would tell them, like, take as much time as you need until you are in a better state, because I know that us not communicating isn't anything personal. I know that you're just going through a hard time and you need your space. And I think the best thing like a friend can do, of course, is just pray for them, be there if they ever need a listening ear, and give them some space to get through that. And I'm glad that you did. And I've noticed a huge difference in you over the past 7 months, honestly. And I'm just so proud of you.
Oh, stop.
I don't want to stop.
Because you're just so sweet. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways, that whether you go through hardships in life or not, concerning friends and other people in your life, I mean, maybe even those closest to you, who knows? It's always the people that you can lean upon, rely on, and the genuine people you find in life that you never want to let go, because they, in this world, are quite rare, very few and far in between. And very grateful I met you when I did in life. Literally the second person I came across in Summer Advantage. And I just, for some reason, just knew deep in myself, yeah, she seems cool. And I approached you, and we just started talking. And funnily enough, the first thing we talked about, I know we've said in previous podcasts, but was politics and how we had different perspectives. And we just didn't care at all. And we got closer because we were willing to hear different thoughts from each other. And despite how the world is seemingly, especially through the media, revolving around division. I'm grateful that we united with things that we did have in common and respected what we didn't and grew each other in fantastic ways. And people that challenge you in a respectful and wonderful way like we have with each other are those you want to keep in your life. So genuine and loving people that hope you do better with yourself and improve your overall way of thinking and give you peace of mind and lift you up rather than tearing you down. Those are the people you need in your life. And I'm very grateful that with your story you shared with us today about Eva, that she was the only one that left a dent in your life, with how everyone else after that saga was genuine and truly cared for your self-interest, and you realized that you could do the same with them, and you are still very much as trusting as a person as you were with her, as you were with the people who truly cared about you. And I'm very grateful that I've been one of yours since we met. Mm-hmm. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode and you stay tuned for part 2, where Lauryn will expand upon other people impacting her life and realizing more so just how much you need to enforce boundaries, but you don't have to be a bully or mean about enforcing what your limitations are and what you'll accept out of other people. And I'll continue to talk about the internal struggles of life, but then also transition as well into how I've let some people take advantage of my kindness as well. So thank you guys so much for listening. And now we're signing off as the sunshine
and the star. And yeah, and thank you for tuning in.
All right, we'll see you guys next time from your sunshine and star. We love you, and thank you for your patience for waiting for this episode, as we've had quite a long pause in season 4. And stay tuned for part 2. Bye.
Bye.